Okay, hi everyone. This is Rock Your Life again with Nora Finch, and I am here with Mr. Dan's son again. We are doing part 2. And actually, what is unusual for me is that I didn't totally lay out this episode with a bunch of questions because I wanted to wing it. While you got to look at those questions, right?
I didn't read them.
What?
You did
Okay.
send them to me. But I didn't read them. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Well, it causes some thinking.
But I know people send me their questions all the time, and I'm like, no, I want it to be organic, and I want to first thing
flow.
I don't want it to be rehearsed, and I don't want to think about it, because then I don't know.
Because I asked you them before and you did pause for a while. You're like, I have to think about that one.
So is that the problem? I'm being too slow in answering my questions?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to be that slow, but okay. But that's fine. Okay. Because I'll read them to you again.
Yeah.
Because I do have them here. Okay. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to our first show, I talked about art and writing as ways that Dan's son and I express ourselves and it being our form of therapy and how we might not be for everyone. And I wanted to expand a little bit more on that of basically how do you get to this place of not giving a fuck, zero fucks for that matter. And I'm not talking about not taking into account those you truly adore and respect. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the outside world out there. Okay. So for some of us, this can actually take a very long time. For me in particular, I feel like it's taken like most of my lifetime where we feel like we need approval. And again, not everybody has this problem because a lot of people, there are people that are born with a very strong sense of self. You know, they don't have to be told, they don't need validation. They already got it. You know what I mean? So I'm not talking about those people. So now over these last years, well, actually for me, it's never been fearful of speaking up because I've always been an outside the box thinker. And I never knew what people were going to react or how they're going to react. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they don't say anything. Sometimes they listen. But I know there are things that can sound like you are a bad parent or whatever it is, you know, that it sounds not good. And that's basically from social conditioning. That's the different things that I feel like it's rooted in. Okay, so basically what I wanted to say in this process since we last talked is that there's really no reason to give that thought, that sort of thinking, you know, being fearful to speak up, to give that thought any power or worry, because when me come from a place of love and good intentions, people still might think differently because they're coming from their perspective. You know what I mean? Whether they're going to judge or whatever it is, they only know what they know. But it just hurts my soul, literally, like I want to cry when I think that somebody thinks I'm doing something with ill intentions or bad intentions, or, you know, especially in California, because it's very rare to meet very real people that are true to what they say. It's like almost like I get more judgment. You know, and again, too, a female getting involved with any sort of man, it's kind of like if I'm training in class and some guy starts talking to me, I'm not going to be all, dude, I'm married. Like, that's just so dumb. Like, that's dumb to me. You know what I mean? So plus growing up around male influence, this has just been a part of my path of just like the way that I am and certain things that I say. So
what do you say to a guy that comes up to you and hits on you when you're working out?
First of all, that doesn't happen very often and in my entire life, but it's almost always the same approach. But the most recent one, and I think it's a cultural thing, is I think I had never talked to this person before and they immediately came up and said, do you want to go to coffee? He didn't even know my name. He didn't know anything about you. I'm all, do you mean like on a date? And that's when I said it, that like that. But if it's not, can I get your number or whatever it was back in the day? Sometimes people give their business card. You know what I mean? So it's not, you're not developing anything there. And I think because I've become so extroverted, though, people always think we're going in a different direction of the show. People think, like, oh, she's talking to me, she must like me, or what's going on, or is she single, or is she interested, or whatever it is. And so that's when I do have to kind of step back and be like, oh, that's why they think that. And it doesn't mean don't talk, but don't be giving people go signs, which is a whole nother topic, because what is flirting? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not all, damn, you smell good. Or can we roll on the mat together? Like,
oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like, oh, can I get some of that? Like, you don't even know. I have so many great pickup lines now. If I was doing that, you know what I mean? Let me know if you need anything there, Dan.
Yeah, no.
Right?
Nora, I don't know what you mean actually, but yeah, that could be a whole other show.
Yeah. So no, most people ask me to smile and think I look like a bitch. So I don't really, it's not like I go places, and you're like getting hit on or whatever all the time. But yeah, if you go to a bar and you just talk to people, they pretty much think that that's what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that thing. So yeah, everybody has a journey, and that's definitely been part of mine, whether I want to believe it or not. And I'm not a homewrecker. So like, I'm kind of done explaining to people, but definitely if you ask me, especially moving forward, when I interview guests, I'm really respectful of people's relationships. Too much texting, don't text, email, this and that and whatever, because people don't really understand, or they always think it leads this and that and all this sort of stuff. Not everything's about fucking people.
Yeah.
But that is a societal thing with male and females and all that sort of different, that whole friendship talk thing again, which is outside the box.
Yeah. I hear you.
Any questions? Any more questions?
No, that could be actually that could be a whole other show.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I like that though, bringing up, because I haven't really actually ever shared this, and I'm gonna be posting this.
Now we all know.
Okay, now you know, but there's even more than that. So basically, you can have good, loving intentions and everything, and people are just going to think differently, just like you with your artwork. So let's bring that up again. And something people that not have heard of is that by speaking your mind, by your artwork or whatever, can cause something called triggering, which sounds really bad. It can feel like it's something bad, but I just look at it as like a message to look inside of yourself. You know what I mean? Because like, why am I getting mad at you saying that thing or whatever it is?
Yes. I get triggered by some things.
Of course.
And then I just remove myself from that situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what's that movie that came out with World War I? It's a really good movie, but I couldn't watch it because the trauma and the gore was just too much, and it was very extended.
I don't know.
And I thought it was a little bit gratuitous. I think I don't know if it's on Netflix or something. It's a great movie. Like it's it's real. I imagine it's fairly realistic, but it's some of the stuff that those people went through is pretty horrific. I couldn't watch it. I had to turn it off.
Well, we're also, again, the programming of the outside world of whatever, like pain. You don't usually go into pain. That's why self-defense training, it's such a sick addiction. But I've always appreciated pain as information. It's almost like I didn't predict how much I'd get hurt, like bruises and everything. But then it's like, oh, I want more of that. Because I knew what it was doing for me.
All right, sure, yeah.
That's why. Like, who normally wants to go into pain? Like, you know what I mean?
I think that's another topic too, Nora, on a different show.
Yeah. It builds resilience. I know.
Yeah.
Okay. The questions I wanted to ask.
All right.
The questions I wanted to ask though to the audience right now with everything that we just said. So I want you to ask yourself, when you think about expressing yourself or having these fears or whatever, is fear a factor in how you express yourself? Do you not do it because you're so scared of what everybody else is going to think and judge you, right? Number one. Do you keep worrying about that before you make decisions? But more so, how much time and energy are you spending on this? Like, is this a good thing? And is it adding or subtracting to your life?
Are you specific to my artwork, the artwork that I make? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm saying in general. But
in general,
if you would like to answer it, and then I wasn't expecting you to, but I'm just saying this to the masses.
Yeah, those are very good questions for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's
asking to thought provoking.
yes.
Okay. So let's speed it up. We are going to talk about this is okay. First responders new to the industry, just jump right in. You mentioned on when you were, I don't know to say your first year on the job and advice you would give or, particular type of call, like something that you feel would benefit them new to the industry. And I gave an example of, because you brought it up, is like how to calm a patient. Maybe that's a good example, or just anything that you feel like, oh, that really would have helped me. Maybe you didn't have the right implement. You had to
Mhm.
improvise.
Yeah. I think if I was to, and we often do, many paramedics we take students on. So many of us are preceptors, where we mentor or have students come in and they work with us, and often it's the very first time they're doing patient care. And it's one thing I tell all of them is that we've all been there. So we've all had our first patient contact on the ambulance before. We've all done there. We've all been there. So we've all started out not knowing very much. So it's not they're not the position that they're in isn't unusual. And one day the roles are going to be reversed, where they're going to be the preceptor, hopefully precepting students. So just to keep that in perspective, because I think sometimes they think that they have a little bit of imposter syndrome at that stage where they don't feel they're worthy, they don't feel they can do the job, or they don't know if they can, especially if they work with more experienced paramedics that are full of confidence, who don't even get excited over really hairy calls, and they see these people do that and they're like, God, I'm so far away from that. But so I tell them, even the most confident paramedic, most seasoned paramedic at one point was a brand new paramedic shitting their pants when the tones went off. Right. So that's normal. That's normal. The other thing I'd probably say is, I think, because especially right out of school, you're kind of led to believe that you're going to save everyone, or everything you're going to do is going to help. You're going to do
Mhm.
CPR, it's going to help. You're going to do proper artificial respiration, it's going to help. But often they die anyways. So because we're so trained in this is how you do this until you get their O2 sats up, ventilate this way until the CO2 levels are a desirable level that you want, right? So we're trained to do all those things, which is, of course, we're going to get trained that way, but it really isn't instilled that, hey, even though you do everything right, it may not work. So I tell students that try to tell yourself, and many paramedics can agree with this, it's not your emergency. That's a common
Mm.
phrase that we say, where when you're in it and you're freaking out a little bit, you can just say, hey, look, this isn't my emergency. I didn't cause this situation.
Mm.
I'm here to help, but my life, well, I shouldn't say my life isn't in danger, because sometimes it is, but I'm not the one having the heart attack, or I'm not the one that is bleeding to death, or I'm not the one that's suffering from this trauma, or I'm not the one having a stroke. But I'm in a position where I can help this person, but it's not my personal emergency. And sometimes that separates a little bit, where you're able to manage your emotions a bit, to be more effective at the treatment that you're giving.
I
So
like that.
I think those are, and many of us have said that. I know that's not going to be an uncommon statement. Many paramedics tell newer students, and they believe that themselves, that, okay, it's not my emergency, I'm going to go in there. And even when people are screaming and yelling and freaking out,
Mhm.
it's
I
hard not
love
to get involved in that, but
I love
it's not
that
yours.
though. I love that. That's beautiful though, because that could be something just totally brand new thought to somebody and it's,
Yeah.
helps them.
Yeah,
Okay,
for
good.
sure.
Okay, I like it. I like that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, do you wanna I am curious though, because or you can talk about it again. You said, and as far as calming a patient, you went to somebody's house and you're talking about pictures on the wall. Do you remember talking about that
Yeah.
or something?
Hmm.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about that? Yeah. Was that
Yeah.
calming them?
Well, it's distracting them, right? So
Mm.
most student, again, most people, when they call the ambulance, it is an emergent situation for them if they're calling an ambulance, right? For the paramedics that show up, it may not be an emergency. 9 times out of 10, it's not an emergent situation for us in comparison to all the hundreds or thousands of calls we've done previous. But to that patient, it is. And even if it is an emergent situation, we go in and our training kicks in and we're doing, our LOC, ABCs, we're doing assessments, then we're working on our protocols, and we're doing almost this robotic process in order for us not to forget anything. And we have to be that way in order for us not to forget everything, and that we do our protocols properly. However, the perspective of the patient, for someone to come in when they are essentially freaking out, they may not show that physically, but they are in a state if they called the ambulance. And if, for me, what I thought I was able to do was to distract them a little bit from what I was doing and kind of alter the pathway a little bit while still doing my job. Right. I also did that as a way to check their level of consciousness and their cognitive abilities at that time. Right. So if I was something as simple as I'm doing their assessment, if I see a pet or something, I'll ask them like, hey, what's your dog's name? What's your cat's name? And if they love their dog or cat, the normal response would be that they smile or have some type of positive response when they think about their pets. And then they'll tell you their name. Sometimes it completely changed their mindset, like their not the personality, but their emotions that they were having completely switched. And then if I saw that was a positive response, then I start talking about their dog. How old is your dog? And how like that? Blah blah blah. Does he poop inside the house? That kind of stuff. And but if I get no answer, or they look at me like, why are you asking me about my dog right now when I'm dying? Then that is also very telling for me. But most of the time, I'm able to distract them a little bit from, the paramedic robots that are coming in, stabbing them with needles and doing all this stuff. So it's another thing I do is if I saw pictures on the wall, I'd ask something about their personal life, which distracted them a little bit from what we had to do, which it's completely normal for us because we do it 20, 30 times in a shift potentially. So it's nothing weird for us, nothing unusual for us. However, for the patient, it is very unusual to have, blood pressure taken, 12 leads put on, getting your shirt taken off and getting stickies put everywhere and BP cuffs and poked with your fingers for VGLs and, masks put on. So yeah, it's going to be pretty scary for them. For us, it's nothing. So that's what I always try to do. I can't remember what the question was. Did I answer it? I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a standard though? Like to talk like that to the patient? Like, do they train you to like, here's what you can do?
No. My partner would give me a hard time about it all the time. So once I would come in and I would see, then most experienced paramedics, we can come in even before we talk to our patient. We can make the determination of sick or not sick. We can look at them and think, okay, am I going to have to do stuff? And is it timely? You're not always right, but most of the time we are. We can go, okay, sick or not sick. So if I can come in, and I like to do this with senior citizens because I loved having senior citizens as patients. Mm-hmm. And if I walked in and I could tell just by skin color how the family was reacting, how the patient was reacting, then I would do like I would comment on if they're cooking. I would say, oh, it would smell great. If they were watching a football game, I'm like, hey, can I stay and watch a football game with you? And I would actually sit in the chair beside them while my partner did the whole assessment. Mm-hmm. Right. And when I would do that, if I felt it was appropriate to do that, then it made the patient very comfortable. And plus I had a really good idea of what their mentation was like by doing that and how responsive they were to me. And often it made it really enjoyable for everybody. My partner sometimes didn't like it when I would go into that mode because then they would have to sit there and do all the work while I'm sitting on the couch watching the football game with the patient. Well, they just give me a hard time about it. I don't think they. Oh, right. They didn't. I don't think they really. I think they
got this, Dan. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. And if it was a serious call, then 100% I would be doing something. And I think they understood what I was actually doing. is taking care of their emotional needs at that time.
Well, yeah,
Trying to lighten it up a little bit for them. But yeah, it's very tricky when you can and cannot do that on the type of call you have. I'm not going to do that for teenage attempt suicide. That's totally inappropriate.
right.
But
Okay, speaking of our seniors who I love, and again, it's a cultural thing of how they're looked at in our country and the way that they're treated, which is not always good. But what I would like to say is I thought that I was going to go into caregiving, this part of later in life, but maybe they don't need me right now.
yeah, maybe.
I just wanted to make a comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Totally
our
depends.
seniors.
Yeah, me too. I love the seniors. I learn
Mhm.
a lot from them. And
I
some
would
of the
love
stuff they've told me, like, man,
Yeah, they got a lot of wise words. I'd like to teach them how to break fall.
that'd probably be handy. Yeah, that
Yeah,
would be handy.
yeah, to help them from breaking their hips and things
Yeah,
they need to.
yeah.
Okay, this is a really good one. And
Okay.
see, we might only need 2 questions because then that'll be the whole show. Okay, so I don't really love using the word higher ups or superiors or whatever. Did you really
Okay.
ever have anything in your career that either you didn't agree with or you had a confrontation or just how how you dealt with it that I mean you respect how you dealt with it. You think you achieved like
All right.
something
Yeah.
good, not just a ego based. I need to prove I'm right.
This is a question I kind of wish I would have read before we were actually on. Yes, absolutely. But this is my mindset for that.
Okay.
I have met many horrible people in leadership positions, and I've met many wonderful people in leadership positions. Now, if I'm in a position where I work, where I feel things could be done better, again, what's my opinion isn't any better than anyone else's, and the citizens of my city aren't looking. It's not my responsibility to do the overall response. Like I don't have to answer to city council or the mayor, and I respect people in leadership and for that aspect and the added responsibilities that they have. However, they do not know everything, right? And if I look at it more of if I can help them make things better. So I figure I have three ways to approach it, right? The first one thing I definitely do not do is just complain about it and don't do anything about it. So often in my department, when people would complain about stuff, I'm like, well, did you tell our captain about it? And like, well, no. I'm like, well, stop complaining. If you're just complaining to complain, well, then you're just adding to the negative culture, right? If you have a sincere complaint about something, then like how do you expect leadership to make things better if they don't know it needs to be better, right? So if you have a concern, bring it up to them. 9 times out of 10, leadership, okay, well, they also want a solution, right? So here's what the issue I think we have, and here's a solution versus, okay, well, look, this is happening, fix it. That you're not going to get very far that way. So when I would see things that would maybe could be done better, or if I see other departments doing amazing things that I want to incorporate in my department, I would say, hey, this is something that I'm recognizing in our department that I think could be improved, and this is how I think we can improve it. So the first step is to try to improve in your department. Be that person that makes things better instead of that person. Be a contributor to make things better versus someone who just whines and complains for the sake of whining and complaining and being a negative force in your department. Now, if that doesn't happen, because there's many leadership that feel that they're not open to suggestions from their minions, then my next option 2 is to learn to live with it. Be like a duck where the water just washes off your back. And that's really sad when that happens, because then you start getting less engaged at work. Then you get the attitude of, okay, I'm going to come to work, do my job, collect my paycheck, and leave. Right? If that's if they don't feel that their suggestions are not if they're not being engaged or they're not being incorporated into the whole workplace. Now, if one way that a officer or leadership could do that, or if they feel that their suggestion isn't going to work, well, then explain that to the person. Say like, hey, thanks, I really appreciate you coming forward to that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. However, these are the concerns I have about your suggestion, and these are the problems that we're going to run into, because maybe you're not aware of all the workings that happen, like how all the gears are working. So I think that kind of communication is better, because then maybe together you can come, if the leadership acknowledges that what you're saying is a problem in the first place. Now, the third option is if you can't change things to make things better in your department, or people aren't receptive to what you feel would be better, and you can't live with it, well, then your third option is to quit, which is like a swear word in emergency service. Like, what do you mean quit? Like, how dare you say, if you don't like it, quit? Well, what's the alternative? Are you gonna stay there and be absolutely miserable, and your mental health is gonna diminish so much to the point that you're potentially could kill yourself? Like, how is that an alternative to leaving, maybe not leaving the profession, but maybe leaving that organization and going on to a different organizations, do a lateral movement? Like, I don't know why that's such a bad thing. Or if you recognize that, you've been in it for a long time and you kind of stopped really enjoying what you're doing, then maybe it is time to quit and become a basket weaver or a therapist in my case, or get into training, or do some other type of related area. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing, that's totally okay. So that's my response to the other thing that I've learned, is poor leadership can be an amazing teacher. An amazing teacher. So and that's a good way to kind of flip it too, where if you see someone who is just a horrible leader in your organization, learn from that and realize, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to make anyone else feel the way that this person is making me feel. And that is a really good, valuable lesson as well.
Thank you. You did a really great job in remembering all three.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that
talk about all the time.
Yeah, that's something that's always in my brain. Yeah, I use that for everything, not just anything I don't like.
I wasn't totally going to go into this topic today because it is pretty deep, but we might as well right now.
Okay. I'm nervous.
I would like you to define, this is still leadership.
Okay.
I would like you to define toxic.
Oh.
You know what I like? I didn't research very far. I think I like poisonous. It's poisonous.
And yes, it's poisonous and it's infectious.
Yes, right? Because some people, I want you to define it, because not everybody knows or thinks. And I was actually listening to another show of, some kid who didn't grow up around it at all. He's like, what do you mean? Why is that toxic?
Yeah. I think toxic leadership is an infectious mindset that contributes to negative culture in an organization.
I like it. I love it. That's perfect.
Yeah. And the defense of that is often, well, it's just the 10% of people that don't fit into what I'm trying to do here. I've heard leaders say that, right?
Huh?
Where they say, well, it's, if you don't like it, then, there's the door, or, get on the bus if you don't want to get on this bus and get off. And then they say, well, the people that they don't see it as being toxic themselves. They see it if they face any resistance, then they see that as the problem 10%.
So if I'm the leader and if I said to you, Dan, what am I doing that makes this toxic?
Well, see, if you said that, then you're already a good leader already. If you even asking that question, because most leaders, they don't think what they're doing is, they don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand that what they're doing is toxic. but there's a lot of ego involved. Lots of ego.
Yes. Well, this is the way, this is how things have been done.
And how dare you question me? You know, like, I have these many stripes. It's not, who are you to question what I'm doing? Right? You should never. And there was an example of really good leadership. And I had a chief tell me this once, that he said, when we're on the fire ground, then it has to be, trying to remember the word that he used, but when it's on the fire ground, then it is, you do what I say without question, right? Like, you are following orders when we're on the fire ground.
Right.
That's not the time to debate. And that's great. Like, I totally get that. Because they're seeing the bigger picture, and they have the master plan, and they have to put all the pieces together. In order to do that, the cogs need to do what they're doing. But then he also says, when we are not on the fire ground, and when we are, just normal day to day, or back at the station, then it's important that we are more of a social community, and people have their input. So the definition of a toxic workplace, which is different than toxic leadership. A toxic workplace is a place where people don't feel safe to voice their concerns, where they don't feel that they are in a position where they could approach leadership with potential problems, be in the fear that there would be retaliation. And that is very common in emergency services when we're talking about stigma, specifically to mental health, where if you don't feel safe to tell your officer or your supervisor that last call you did broke your mind, fractured your mind, you don't feel safe or comfortable doing that, in the fear that potentially it could be a valid fear that there would be negative repercussions. Well, that is not a safe workplace. That is not a psychologically safe workplace to be in. That's a toxic work environment where you don't feel comfortable. And I've been in situations where we've had meetings where because they know in leadership school, they're saying, look, make sure you get everyone's opinions. But I've been in meetings like that where people voice their opinions, and they are smashed. They're absolutely smashed, where the question has been said, okay, well, what do you guys think we should do here? And then people answer, and they just get crushed. So then, of course, everyone else doesn't say anything, or they just blow sunshine up the leadership's butts, because it's safer that way. So that's definitely a toxic and psychologically unhealthy workplace. Again, this is all my own opinion. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody, but that's just my 2 cents. But
I think it's beautiful, because it puts into words where somebody might be confused. They're like, is this bad? And I don't always know that I would know how to use the word complacent, but is that like a good way to use it in that situation? Because there's other ones I can think of where you're like, well, everybody else, it seems like it's okay, and nobody else is doing anything or like about it, like the whole
that's called normalization of deviation.
Normalization
to the point of normalization of deviance, right? So an example of probably the most sincere, or the most extreme example of that. Okay, I might get in trouble here, but like I said, I'm just going to say this is why I don't think about the questions, is that German prison guard who believes that, it's okay to torture women and children and men because that's just the way it is, right? Because the normalization of how that whole society changed, it became normal. Like, this is a normal thing to do, right? When the reality is, no, that is a horrific thing to do, right? And so small changes eventually grow into these tyrannical societies that are horrible to mankind, where it infects millions of people that are brainwashed to believe that it's okay, right? So I don't, of course, not to that extreme, but in many organizations, it's like, hey, it's okay to slap a woman's ass when she goes by, because we all do it. So all the other people that see it, all the other guys that see it, if the officers and leadership are doing that, well, then it's okay. I can do that too, right? So that's deviation normalization of deviation, and it's gradual, like small steps. So to the point where, hey, maybe if I verbalize that this is not right, there's so much backlash because everyone else thinks it's okay, because over time, and I see that a lot in emergency services, where there's like behaviors that are widely accepted and normalized, but if you really think about it, it's like, how is this a normal thing to do? How is this acceptable?
Well, you know what I would like to add to that actually is personal story. Again, this goes back. I'm not talking bad about organized religion, okay? My client, she's like 79 and she's been going to church, this one church, like her entire life, but she only goes to sing the choir, right? I don't even know that she believes anything. And so basically they hired, I don't know that it was the pastor because I don't want to relay that part of the story, but basically some sort of lead in the church who is a known molester of kids. And he's getting paid like $80,000 a year. He's all up there and whatever. Anyway, she brought it up. Whatever, why are you having this guy there? He not having an adult with them, when he's whatever they're doing in services or whatever activities. And so basically she left, but she was traumatized there for a while because she'd been going there for so long. And then I was just like, maybe again too, it's a generational thing, like that whole mentality of like, I don't agree with it, even though this is a very serious thing. I don't agree with it, but I'll just keep going because I don't want to find another church. I like it here, or whatever, your job. So that's why it's like, wow, like, how is it that you get to that point where you're excusing something? And, maybe too with the fire service, especially with sexual harassment, don't get me started on that because I have solutions to help prevent with that sort of thing. If somebody would just ask me.
Well, that's the thing. There are solutions, and there's many ways out of it. And successful organizations know about that, and they can.
Well, yeah, I wonder though if they'd be doing it like how I would be doing it, because I have simple things like in those first beginnings, with your crew when you're setting up, like having those conversations of asking people like, do you know what personal space is? Like, that's just a simple, question, and everybody has a different idea of it. You know what I mean? So I guess I'm just more creative, I guess, like that. But I don't know the answer. But so little things like that, like I really hope we're moving forward and there aren't people, because I did see a video with racial stuff, examples in like other people speaking up when you hear things in the workplace. You know what I mean? So maybe in fire service, it'd be like, hey, if it's a female, like, dude, like she's not laughing, she's not smiling, like quit doing that. Not the bystander.
That's what has to be done. That's what has to be done.
Bystander. That's all that it is. Because right? You're like, because the one incident that I talked to her, and it was actually by 19 people, female. There was a language barrier. So you can't, if they were just like, well, why didn't she say anything? Why didn't she do anything? Well, right?
Yeah.
Who's even helping protect her though, in that sense too, though, right? They're not smiling. They're not laughing. I mean, maybe it's different if they're laughing. You don't know what they're thinking, but like, and the repetitiveness of, and maybe it's not really bullying. Maybe it's just, they're doing it in another way that makes somebody uncomfortable. Like,
And a lot of organizations, fire departments, they're part of the city of a community, of a municipality. And most municipalities now will have, respect in the workplace or an anti-bullying and harassment policy that's in place. However, in many sections of that city, they just don't follow it, right? But we say, oh, we have this policy in place, but it's just normalized. Yeah, we have the policy, but here, it's okay because this is how we've always done it. So it doesn't, we don't do that. We're like, well, no, that's not okay. And someone does have to come up. So if someone is being harassed, men or women, or they're being stigmatized because of their gender, size, race, whatever, well, then yeah, someone needs to stand up and say, hey, that's not okay. You shouldn't be doing that. And if they continue to do that, well, then you need to report that person.
Consequence.
Yeah, because if you don't, then it's going to continue on, and then before you know it, you're a prison guard in Nazi Germany. torturing men, women, and children. I know.
Bringing up Germany again, huh?
I know. Don't get me wrong. I'm not
I know.
condoning, right? But
I know.
and the reason I brought that up because I heard of that example when I started
Mhm.
studying
Mhm.
about normalization of deviation extending to deviance, and that was the example, like the most extreme example that they used from that cultural
Yeah.
portion of it,
Mhm.
which I found really interesting and really scary,
Mhm.
actually, when you think about it, of how that
Oh,
developed over
yeah.
time.
Of course. And again, this is again back to changing cultural things because again, people joining in and the camaraderie and all the stuff maybe that they're feeling. It's like, what about that other? I'm sure there's somebody in that room that's like, okay, that's messed up. Like,
Yeah, but they don't say
what?
anything. I
Right.
think it's more
Right.
specific and
Mhm.
more empowering for emergency services because we have such a family orientated group, or
Mhm.
you don't want to piss people off that
Mhm.
if you go into a structure fire and you're part of the entry team, then
Mhm.
you are putting each other's hands in each other's lives in each other's
Mhm.
hands, right? You
Mhm.
really need to depend on each other,
Mhm.
so you don't want to have bad
Mhm.
mojo with anybody on your crew, right?
Mhm.
Because that just adds another element to stress, right? So that really has to be out in the open and faced. And I think what would happen if someone did come forward, the majority of the people would probably go like, "Hey, you're right."
Right.
Yeah, you're
I
right. Now that you say it, that is
right.
messed up. Like we should stop doing it. But usually just takes just that one person to challenge it and say, "Hey, guys, what are we doing here? Like this isn't right."
Well,
You know?
right. Okay. I don't know. This is kind of holiday since it's holiday-ish time. I actually wanted to write a little post on it so we can end on this. So I was going to
Yeah.
talk a lot about, Christmas is not always a happy time for people, a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really have a reason to not be in a good mood, but I think not I think my underlying stuff is just the commercialization of culture and gifts and not about a true meaning because I don't celebrate it as a Christian thing. I did growing up because I had to, but all the roots of it. And so basically, I wanted to remind, and maybe you have some things to say on this, which embracing what you have, if it is your crew or whatever it is around you, because not everybody even has the blood family that they like
Yeah.
necessarily around them, like people that don't have that. So I think I don't know. Do you have any? Because I don't know your family life though either. Like, um, just do you have any reminders of like just kind of that like or something during holiday time? Like, is it a happy time for you? Like, do you have any piece of anything?
For me, yeah, for me it is, and I'm actually was going to do a post on this actually on my social media. That the weird part is, and for some reason it happens all year, but just over the holiday season, and it just maybe more families get together. But when emergency workers they go to their shift and they see tragedies that are ripping families apart, they're experiencing, death and evil and like horrible things that are done or if that families are experiencing, whether death in the family or car accidents that are life-changing tragedies that have forever changed that family. And then you come home and now you have to adjust to, okay, well, this is what my family's like. It's like sometimes it takes a little bit more time to adjust from that mindset of, okay, I've just come from, you know, comforting a 11-year-old girl after her whole family's been murdered and trying to comfort her in some way
Mm,
uh, with what she witnessed, knowing that her life has been changed forever. And now I have to go home to my own 11-year-old girl where everything is okay and normal. Um, just how it was, I'm sure, for this other family before. No one expects those things to happen. It's a weird transition for emergency workers to make from the tragedies they see while they're on shift and then adjusting to coming home and having to change light bulbs and pick up dog poop from their backyard. It's sometimes it takes a little bit more time this time of year for some reason because I don't know, it just seems to be more impactful. However, those things happen all the time. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
well, that's okay because it still let me. Well, do you think, like, so for you during holidays or, when you were actively, working and stuff like that, is there anything maybe that helped you? Um, whether you wanted, if it's family, because I don't know. Are you close with your family? Do you live by your family?
Yeah. And they were good.
Family,
They were good. They would understand, if I had a good day or a bad day. So if it took me a day to kind of adjust, to transition from the stuff I saw at work to kind of a normal, whatever normal is. It was normal for this other family at one point, or are they these people experiencing these tragedies this time of year? So they kind of knew what my job was like, and they knew not to ask questions, and they gave me that time. So
but you never, maybe like, did you ever have anything like music or something that would kind of give you, like, do you look at this time as peaceful? Like holiday stuff?
Yeah. I have very fond memories of holiday season. Yeah, absolutely.
And even though in your career you might have a Christmas Eve like that.
Oh yeah.
Or
I hated working at Christmas, like 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, hated it. Because I knew that I'd be doing CPR underneath a Christmas tree in front of an entire family with a bunch of presents. And that's just a weird...
Did you?
Oh God, lots. Ask any paramedic. Majority of them, if they're working those times, people don't stop dying over Christmas in their living room, right?
Oh no, but I didn't know if it was enhanced or if it's like in particular.
It's just the environment. And I've done a couple art pieces specifically on that with Christmas trees in it, with paramedics doing CPR and stuff with the family standing by. Yeah, it's just a weird, the dichotomy of the joyous time of the holiday season with the Christmas tree and the presents next to death and a horrified family. It's just a really bizarre.
So maybe that tip, when you walk away, what are you thinking creates a painting? You're all, I need to do a painting right now.
For me, that's why I processed it that's why I got out of my head by doing the artwork for it. And for some people, it may not affect them at all, right? It's really individual. But I think the big thing would be to have coping like acute coping mechanisms, for mechanisms that keep you in the game to be able to do what you are doing. And most of the time we can do that where our training just kicks in and we do it. And then the effects kind of come in after. But just in case you're like, oh my God, I don't think I can't do this at this moment. This is too much. Then have a plan beforehand of what you're going to do in that situation. Then the other one is have a long-term action plan. Okay, if this shift is specifically bad, what are my, then if that's the case, then as soon as I get home, I'll have a shower, then I'm gonna go for a walk before I go to bed, or I'm going to do, these are the things, this is my plan if I have a hairy shift. And it's important, I think, to have,
I think that's good.
A long-term and an acute plan for managing your stress level.
I think that's a huge thing, just like life, having a mental map or having a plan of action, because then you're just thrown into it, and it's like, fuck.
No, I gotta go.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for listening, but don't hang up yet. So
okay.
Yes, thank you for listening, and maybe we'll do more shows with Dan, but hopefully this provided some useful information for you, and I know we went over a lot of stuff. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.